So the difference between the two is really interesting. And I think it's going to be, to be seen in terms of if any approach is better than the other. I ultimately think, we need to find that middle ground because, we often hear like the phrase, compliance isn't security. I've used it throughout my career like everyone else, but I've kind of come around to think that it is security. It's just not the elimination of risk, and nothing is the elimination of risk, to be honest with you. We all know that, right? Other than not doing business or not having a product or not having software. But compliance is the floor. It's not the ceiling. It's the baseline, right? It's not, we don't want to stop there in many cases. And I think without that floor, we'd kind of be in free fall in terms of the state of security in the industry, because anyone who's worked in large environments or organizations, if you try to go to development teams, engineering teams, leadership, and get them to do some kind of security, task or objective without kind of a requirement, like a compliance requirement to point to, it can be problematic. It can be challenging. They have other things they're working on. They're trying to get these features out. They're trying to do other activities for customers. So compliance can be a good forcing function in that regard. But then again, you can go too far, right? It could impede innovation or slow down, developer velocity and speed to market. It can be cumbersome and costly. We've seen, for example, in the US, the Office of the National Cyber Director released an RFI for regulatory harmonization because, we have this acronym soup of SOC 2, HIPAA, HITRUST, FedRAMP, NIS2, DORA. You go on and on. And it's like a lot to try to keep track of that. And we live and breathe this. This is what we do for a living. Imagine development teams or engineers who are just trying to build a product and they're like, I have no clue what the heck those acronyms mean, or what I need to do or not, or what these things are. So it's a long answer, but there's a big difference, I think, in the two approaches between the EU and the US right now. And I think there's going to be some pros and cons of each approach, and neither one is perfect.
I'm not quoting or paraphrasing anyone, but it's the state of where breaches are. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I really like the way you frame that because, we know in cybersecurity, how long have we heard, the risk-based decision making or risk-based determinations, those kind of things in terms of the impact versus, the cost and those kind of things, the cost of protecting an asset versus the cost of implementing the security control or measure. And what businesses are doing is they're making that risk-based decision. They're saying, hey, if I don't, it's going to cost me X to do a mature, robust, effective AppSec program, for example. And versus the alternative, which is a fine, for example, of not doing it. And if the fine is not sufficient, they're going to choose the risk, they're going to choose appropriately. The vulnerability backlogs keep growing. They may be blind to some of the information, let alone even be able to keep up. And it's a challenge. That's why I think a lot of people now are scrambling to say, hey, I don't need more notifications, alerts, things like that. I need clarity. I need clarity around prioritization. What matters? What do I need to address? What matters most? Because they kind of have this massive, pile of vulnerabilities and they really don't know where to start with it. And they're starting to see some of the legacy ways of doing it, CVSS based scores, things like that are not sufficient in terms of addressing real risks. So it's a mess.